Been doing been in this innovation space for the last, I would say, close to 10 years now. From the time I started developing products, this particular concept, from the time I start doing research and looking for innovative ideas that I can bring to the marketplace. And I can honestly say that since I moved back to the continent, I've been attending a lot of conferences in this innovation space. It's been very interesting to learn why or where the gaps are, first of all, to bring this innovation to the next level, and also what's happening uh, where innovation is being dominated by Western countries, actually, and some Asian countries in Africa. You know, why are we so behind? Even though we have the talents, I mean, I can't tell you how many different innovative ideas I've seen for the last 4 years. Just amazing. I was a judge at the iShow competition this year, and seeing this group of kids, medical kid, came up with a device. You put your thumb on the machine, and it tests for malaria or not. I seen another one who developed a. It was a glove built in. It's a hardware and software system where it translates the sign language to actual to English or French, whatever language you want. Just amazing. Just amazing innovation, But why those innovation just don't scale up? We slowly building the ecosystem. I'm not gonna say we are not, but we building it in a very very slow pace, and we don't seems to be catching up. Uh, we talk about this hubs that have been developed across the continent. Yes, we have hubs that are developing accelerator program. We have university now that have been built. Obviously because a lot of quality university from overseas setting up shop in Africa. Obviously the fact of the matter is migration to the West is getting extremely. I think I won't say impossible, but it's getting extremely hard. The policy are changing. Um, there's this paranoia, I would say, but it doesn't matter. I think it's a good thing for Africa because now we have no choice but to stay here and build our continent. But the biggest challenge I see in this ecosystem is lacking. It's money. And I hate when people say, well, money is not everything. Well, guess what? When you look at the biggest innovation or innovative products or companies in Africa, they mostly are all dominated by Western or Asian countries. Why? Because they're able to raise so much money. They have access to capital. We don't. In China, for example, we can't compete manufacturing wise because they get subsidies from the government. There is none here. There's some tax credit, but that's it. You know, Companies like Mcopa, Mobisol. I remember when I first came to Rwanda in in 2000 when I moved here in 2013. There was a young man that was working with Tigo. Actually, I saw that on an article, and he had developed a solar, system for home way before the Mobisol and all those guys. When I first arrived there, when solar was still very very new, and what happened to that guy? He disappeared. There's another young man in Kenya came up with solar light. He's still going, but he's just small operation, and his business is sustainable. It's more sustainable than any of them. But the Mobisol came, the Mcopa came, they have valuation of $1 billion. And that's another thing. It takes money to build businesses. I don't care what you say. Of course, you can't just throw money at something. But if you have a good products, a good team, and all that, then you need capital to expand. And I can tell you, when was last time you heard an African company run by an African person with $1 billion valuation? Forget about $1 billion. How about 100 million? How about 10 million? Israel has more unicorn company. A unicorn is $1 billion valuation than the whole continent. Can you imagine? Oh, it's just me losing my mind. One country has more billion-dollar valuation company than a whole continent. Denmark has more research paper um, issued every year than the whole continent. Medical research, scientific research. You know, we have countries that have more um, patent technology patent than the whole continent of Africa. And we're talking about this innovation hub that we're doing. Now, what we're building is an innovation hub that only a few are taking advantage of because us as an African, we just don't have the tooling to compete. 100% of our funding as ARED, 100%. I'm not going to say the amount, but 100% of our funding came from overseas. Zero came from Africa. Zero. Not even 0.5, 0.1, 0.0001. No, just strictly zero. None. So a few decades ago, we were talking about brain drain. We're talking about, highly skilled people going overseas. Now I'm talking about technology drain because we have young men with great technology that can solve a lot of our problems, not getting the support they need. And foreign companies coming and just buying that for penny out of the dollar. Penny out of the dollar. Because those young men and women just don't even know how to really value their company. And most of them can't even survive 6 months because they're running out of money. And we are told go to the bank and get a loan. Come on, guys. If we don't get this VC and grants program, EU spend $100 billion on grants alone. We have the African Union that spends $0. We want to build this infrastructure. Fine, that's great. But we need to put money on the side for innovation. We can't just keep talking about it and expecting miracles or money falling out of the sky. It just doesn't make sense. And if this continue, this is what exactly is going to happen. And I hate to predict bad stuff. I mean, of course, we can still change. Things can happen. But if we don't build this ecosystem money-wise with grants, funding, startup, funds and scaling funds, VCs and all those things, angel investors, ecosystem as quickly as possible, this is what's going to happen. In the next 5 to 10 years, most of our technology will either move outside Africa and just license back to Africa. And why is it important to own a technology? Not on the company side, but on the country side. If you think about it for a second, and that's what China fought for 20 years. They really understood that, yeah, it's great to bring companies from overseas that have the know-how, the technology to build certain things, but you need to learn that so you can build your own at some point. Because if you don't own your technology, you do not own your economy. And if you don't own your economy, you're dependent on somebody else. And at some point, that person or that country, or whatever the case that is, if you fall out, well, guess what? If you fall out, then you're out of business because they're just going to cut the van, the pipeline, and you're going to be what? And there's perfect example during history. I remember Iran, when they got toppled, the United States decided not to sell them parts anymore for their fighter planes. They were out of business, period, out of business. And maybe those are military things. But look at agriculture. Look at how much technology from agriculture comes from overseas. And we talk about Africa can feed the whole world by itself. But most of the technology we use is from overseas. If they're not happy about one of our leaders or the way we're running things, they can use that as bargaining chips and tell them, listen, if you don't do this, we're not going to do that. You're going to run out of food. Your people going to rise up, et cetera, et cetera. So you get my point and you see where I'm going with this. So we need to own part of our technology, And I'm not saying we should own all of it, but at least we should own the ones that are developed by African youth to solve our own problem. I can't tell you how many companies are getting bought for 100,000, 50,000, and I'm talking about technology. But they have to register overseas so they can raise some funds. That technology is no longer ours. And now they have to answer to shareholders that are not African, that don't understand the concept and all those things. So the bottom line is, if we need to stop this technology drain, we need to build the full ecosystem ASAP.